Deadpool Wolverine is finally here, and I had the pleasure of seeing the movie last night, so let's get into my review and thoughts about how it sets up the future of the MCU. This will talk about spoilers, so if you don't want to know, don't go any further. I think to begin, this movie is really fun. Many people, including myself, had a high level of hype for this movie. While I can see people being disappointed by the movie after they take a step back from the hype of Hugh Jackman's return, I think it was a great Deadpool movie. That opening scene was one of the best in the entire MCU, and I think you could reasonably argue that it takes the top spot against some other strong candidates. I would describe this movie as Multiverse of Madness done better because of the way that the cameos aren't done just for fan service, but actually have meaning within the story. The big cameo is Chris Evans returning as Human Torch, which is something I discussed in my predictions video on Wednesday. It was really nice to see Chris Evans back in the MCU and be able to just curse like a sailor. I think they also played the build-up of an Avengers Assemble really well before switching to Flame On. And while there were other cameos from the X-Men, Elektra, X-23, and Wesley Snipes' Blade, I think that Channing Tatum was the breakout star of the cameo. It was nice to finally see him get to play Gambit after over 20 years of trying to make it happen, and the way they played both his struggle to get the film made and Gambit as a character overall was really funny. It also got me a little excited about what Marvel could have planned in the future for their own versions of Johnny Storm and Gambit. Speaking of the future, we got to see a Wolverine variant played by Henry Cavill, and while it was just a minute or so, I think he showed that he could be the MCU's Wolverine. I'm still on the X-23 train, but if they want to do Logan again, I'm on board with Cavill. I just hope this isn't a John Krasinski moment. Another moment I could see people being disappointed by is the appearance of the Hulk. So it was just a few seconds long, and Wolverine and Hulk actually never come to blows. I imagine that they are trying to build this up for Secret Wars, which we have kind of already had decades-long build-up, but I suppose they just want to make us wait a little bit long. Overall, I think this was a really good movie, and in the way that Civil War was an Avengers movie that had the Captain America name, I think this is a Wolverine movie that happens to have the Deadpool name. The humor of it does rely heavily on having knowledge of pop culture and other films, so if you haven't seen them yet, I would maybe watch them or a YouTube recap, but if you have that knowledge, this will be one of the funniest movies in the entire MCU. I also think the road trip style movie that this kind of does works well because it leads to that concept of being annoyed with your car guests, and it pumps up the buddy comedy part of this movie. Cassandra Nova and Mr. Paradox won't rise to the higher level of MCU heroes, but I do think that they do enough to push the plot forward and for you to reasonably root against them, especially Mr. Paradox. All this being said, I want to get into a quick theory that I've seen floating and I want to expand upon a little. At the end of this film, Deadpool and Wolverine end up back in Deadpool's universe, which is Earth 10005. This could be our official second universe for Secret Wars. With B-15 declaring that this universe is as healthy as ever, this could lead it to being on a collision course with the MCU Earth. With Deadpool doing something that was unnatural in restoring his timeline, this could cause major complications in the future. I reasonably think that this is the best course of action for the MCU, as it is becoming less and less likely that they have the time to build up a second universe for audiences to care about in time for Secret Wars. However, using the Fox universe as the second universe makes sense and may have been the plan since 2019's acquisition of Fox. Many people, including myself, were surprised that they announced Secret Wars that was coming so soon, so this may just be our fix that we are looking for. We of course got Monica Rambeau transporting into a different dimension with Kelsey Grammer's Beast, which can easily have been this universe instead of an entirely new one. This will tie the two together and bring them into direct conflict with one another as they try to save themselves. Rambeau could have built a rapport with Deadpool's universe, and she can be the one that convinces them to fight against either Kang or Doom instead of one another. There is a tease that Avengers 5 and 6 may be a two-part event. It is possible that Part 1 is Avengers vs. X-Men and Part 2 is Secret Wars. We have to remember that Kevin Feige said that in the future of the MCU, this has a level 8 importance instead of the 9 of Infinity War or 10 of Endgame. And taking this at face value, I don't see that come across, so there has to be further plans for what happens in this movie. While I would like a bigger build-up of the characters to use in Avengers vs. X-Men, they could use the old roster to avoid major conflict with their newer characters if they want to expand upon their storylines further. Secret Wars would also be able to serve as a way for them to officially bring the Fox characters they want to Earth 616, while leaving the others behind once the conflict ends. A lot of the legacy characters from both universes could be sent off in this movie as a new era of the MCU begins. We could then go into a full-blown mutant saga and have that be the foundation for this second life of the MCU.